Governor Malloy gets his budget signed, but does that mean the battle is over? It depends on who you ask. Also, the news of Osama bin Laden's death has brought up lots of questions about what that means in terms of safety, in terms of continuing military action abroad. And there's a push to make assaults on teachers an even greater offense. We have a teacher here to say why this kind of bill is needed. Hi, you're watching The Real Story. I'm Lori Perez. After months of town hall meetings and marathon debates at the Capitol, lawmakers approved the budget and Governor Malloy signed it into law a few days ago. Highlights include $1 billion in cuts to spending and $1.5 billion in tax increases. It also went through without a done deal on the $2 billion in concessions and savings the governor is seeking from the state workers union. As of this taping, we have no finality on what is going to happen with those negotiations. Joining me to talk about the possibilities of what might happen and the reality of what has already happened are House Majority Leader Brendan Sharkey and Representative Jason Perillo. Thanks, both of you, for coming here. I know you guys just came from the Capitol. I mean, I guess if we could talk about, first of all, about whether or not you think the governor, you know, in your opinion, is going to be successful in these negotiations with the unions.
Well, we met with the governor actually today, as of this taping, and he's very optimistic that he is going to be able to reach an agreement with our friends in labor. I think the alternatives to not obtaining those concessions and reaching that deal are truly draconian. I don't think anybody fully grasps how deep those cuts are going to have to be to make up for the $1 billion of concessions that he's seeking from unions. So I think everybody's pulling for him and for the unions to reach an agreement.
But Representative Perillo, are you confident?
We're optimistic. I mean, we would love to see that happen. I mean, you know, given the fact that we're in the wake of a tax increase, the largest tax increase in the state of Connecticut's history, I hope that we don't have to go back to that. You know, and a lot of it depends on what the governor and the Democrats want to do. But given the fact that we've seen almost $2 billion, I almost said million, $2 billion in tax increases next year and then the same in the following, that's significant. And I hope we don't see any more of that.
I mean, Republicans have been in agreement that you need that money from you need the savings and the concessions from the unions,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
And what do you think is going to be the impact if he doesn't get it?
Well, I mean, you know, the governor has said that there could be cuts to municipal aid, and quite frankly, cuts to municipal aid simply become another tax increase. So we'll have, you know, nearly $2 billion in taxes already that has been voted on, and perhaps even more than that that's going to filter down to municipalities. So this is a huge hit on residents in the state of Connecticut. So if we are fortunate enough to see a full compromise and concession package, that'll be good for residents.
And they've also talked about lots of layoffs, the possibility of lots of layoffs.
Yeah.
4,000 was the number that came up, but some are saying it'll be more than that.
It could be more than that, in fact, yes. And programs being cut across the board, departments shutting down. There's a lot of very serious stuff that would happen if we can't find that billion.
So this puts the onus on the unions?
I think it puts the onus on both. I mean, I think what we did earlier this week in passing the budget that we did is we made a statement as a legislature that, A, we have confidence that the governor and our unions are going to be able to come together for concessions, but also it sets the framework that the governor set out at the beginning of the session about how we can get out of the mess that we are in. Mm-hmm. A $3.5 billion deficit. Everybody, I think there's consensus. We can't do it entirely with cuts. We can't do it entirely with revenue increases. There had to be a mix. Even Governor Rells brought in a consultant a couple of years ago that advised us the same way. Mm-hmm. There was no way to do this one way or the other. I think one of the advantages of the way we did it, though, unlike our friends in New York and New Jersey who balanced the state budget off the backs of local municipalities, I'm waiting for the cry to come across the border from New York and New Jersey about 6 months from now when all the local property taxpayers in those states get their local property tax bills, because that's how it's going to be for them.
But why aren't we, I went to 15 of the 17 town hall meetings and I kept hearing from the state workers, they're saying we're getting hit twice. Like why isn't that accurate, or would you disagree with that assessment?
Well, before that, I want to get back to something that Representative Sharkey said. There is not consensus that this can't be done without raising taxes. And in fact, we as House and Senate Republicans offered a real common sense budget that did not have tax increases. what we've seen in the budget that's been approved and signed by the governor are increases in the sales tax, increases in the income tax, new taxes on clothing, shoes, you name it. I mean, if it moves, we tax it. And there is a better way. There's a different way to do that, and we did lay that out. And unfortunately, it didn't have the support we would have liked to have seen on the other side of the aisle.
But if I can respond to that, I think what we learned because the Republicans presented that as an alternative, as an amendment to the budget that we were originally presented. And what we learned in the course of that debate was that it was full of the same kinds of gimmicks that got us into the trouble in the first place. It had $500 million of what we call lapses, which are undefined cost savings to be realized over the course of the next year. It had a proposal for, I believe it was over $400 million in Medicaid savings from fraud, which we've done in the past, and it's impossible to reach those kinds of numbers. An undefined restructuring of our debt. Rather than paying off our debt, we were restructuring our debt to save another couple $100 million, something that the Treasurer should be doing. The bottom line was that it was very apparent that the alternative that was being proposed with no tax increases was not realistic. It was running into the same problems and using the same gimmicks that we've used in the past that got us into this place in the first place.
Why would you disagree with that? Because some people have said, let's just lay it on the line. As painful as it might be, the Democrats are laying the tax increases on the line and telling us what we're going to have to do. Why not just go with that?
Why not just go with tax increases?
Yeah,
well, the answer is look at the economy.
As part of the solution, right?
Look at the economy. Folks are struggling. And what I heard in the town hall meetings that I held and what I heard in the town hall meetings that I attended, where the folks just simply can't afford it. They can't afford to pay new taxes. And if the New London Day just came out with a study that said each average middle-class taxpayer in the state of Connecticut is going to pay another $600 a year just in state taxes alone. That's real money to families.
Right.
That makes a difference.
Although
that's a choice in whether you buy new clothes for your kids before school or you name it. The list is endless.
Although I saw that analysis, and that included the family that's going to do Botox treatments 4 times a year as part of the equation. So I'm not sure that was necessarily a fair assessment of what the average taxpayer is going to face.
At the same time, it can't be argued that an increase in taxes at the state level has an impact on families and an economy like this that's just untenable.
And if I could, Representative Sharkey, just to be a devil's advocate, I was at a fundraiser the other night, and I was speaking to a doctor who, a self-described very liberal Democrat, and he said, I don't have so much a problem with the taxes. I can swallow that. But what I do have a problem with, and this coming from, as I said, a self-described Democrat, is the spending. He called it offensive, and when we had the discussion about the governor saying it's a flat-funded budget, he just said, I just can't handle it. I mean, how do you rein someone like that back in?
Well, I think he's misinformed. It is a flat-funded budget. The only reason why it's slightly increased is because we are using a federal program that requires us the provider tax on hospitals, which does require us to put into the spending side additional spending, but we get much more than that back in federal reimbursements. So it is a flat-funded budget in the first year, even but for that hospital provider tax fix, which a lot of states are now doing. I think folks who don't realize how much cutting we've done need to take a longer look, and we don't emphasize it enough, perhaps, that there was significant cuts we've already done in the last couple of years. I mean, labor has given already. Last year gave over $700 million in give-backs in terms of furlough days and pay freezes. We did that again this year as part of this current budget, as part of the framework that the governor laid out. So we really are cutting back. We've consolidated 83 agencies down to 52 in this current budget. We are finding all those things. I think we're looking for every way we can to make government more efficient. But in the end, cuts are not the only way we were going to get out of the crisis that we were in.
Well, if we were really looking for every way to make government more efficient, we wouldn't have seen an increase in spending from the current year. If you look at the budget, we are spending more next year.
Because of the hospital provider tax.
Well, the hospital tax is a train wreck unto itself that's going to have an impact on the economy and is going to cost us jobs in the healthcare sector. And that's going to impact patients' access to care as well. But you can color this any way you want. You can make it look as pretty as you'd like. When you spend more money in year 2 than you did in year 1. That is a spending increase. And I think the gentleman you talked to at the fundraiser is 100% right. We need to rein that in, and we have not done that.
We have less than a minute, but if I could ask you both whether you think that this is now a done deal. I mean, you have until June 8th. You could make, Republicans told me, up until June 8th, you can make changes to pieces of the budget. Do you think that will happen, and to what pieces?
Well, the key element is what are the concessions that we're going to be getting from labor, and we're waiting for the governor and labor to reach that agreement now. So whatever the results of that negotiation is, hopefully it's the full $1 billion package that the governor has laid out. And if that's the case, then we don't need to make any changes. We've already adopted the budget. If it's short of the $1 billion, it has to come back to us for approval as to what other cuts we may want to see. But there's going to be no additional spending, either of the surplus or next year's surplus, to try to cover these gaps. It's all going to debt reduction.
Well, and we do have another 5 weeks. And when people call me aghast at the taxes that we've imposed, I simply tell them, well, good God, call every legislator you know, every legislator who's in the phone book. And, their voices hadn't been heard to this point. They were talking, nobody was listening. So the hope is that in the next 5 weeks, somebody will start to listen, and we'll see some changes and perhaps some adjustments to the budget.
Right,
but maybe that's wishful thinking.
Right. Well, if I had to guess, I don't think it's a done deal. So I appreciate you both for spending time with us today. Thanks a lot for being here. I know you guys are busy. Well, the whole world is waiting and watching to see what will be the lasting impact of Osama bin Laden's death. We'll talk about it coming up.